and welcome to an episode of the Jonah Keen Show on Radio DePaul. Welcome one and welcome all. For those who are tuning in for the very first time, you may be curious as to what the Jonah Keen Show is all about. Well, I'll tell you. Ever since I was a teenager, I've had an absolute passion for giving advice. Some kids did sports, some kids did theater, some kids did math club, but I did advice. In fact, I've been a certified advice giver for almost 10 years now. Good job, me. On the Jonah Keen Show, I'll be interviewing folks who have a wide range of expertise and advice to share. Also on the show, there will be some opportunities to call into the station and ask for your own personalized advice. Maybe you need some relationship advice. What about pet advice? Maybe you need some financial advice. Maybe you just need some good old-fashioned self-help advice. We take all kinds of requests for advice. My name is Jonah, Mr. Advice Keen, and welcome to the Jonah Keen Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Jonah Keen Show. Hope you all are doing well. Hope you all had a fantastic week. Last week, it wasn't the best week. I got some letters from my ex-wife about just the state of our divorce and how things will be proceeding. I don't want to get into that too much, though, but trust me, folks, it's ugly. It's getting bad, and I thought I'd be able to see my children again, but it might turn out differently. But I don't really want to get into that right now. Hope you all are doing well. Welcome to the show. Didn't want to start it on a down note. My apologies. Today is going to be the start of a very new kind of advice series. It's going to be a 2-episode series on states. In fact, it's not just that, it's state-themed advice. So what I'm going to do is list off every state, starting from A, ending with Z, and pretty much listing some advice for each state. I'm Mr. Advice, by the way. I give all sorts of advice. And I'll be giving advice on each state and just some typical advice because I'm Mr. Advice, and it's kind of my thing. It's what I do. So getting that out of the way, I think we should proceed with the advice. Starting with Alabama, the very first state in the states, if you list it off alphabetically, would be Alabama. In Alabama, my advice for Alabama is a lot of people know Sweet Home Alabama, the song, and not a lot of people know Alabama for their incest. Who here knows what incest is? Raise your hands at home. I wish I could count them. So I'm just going to talk about incest for a bit. Incest is sexual relations between people classed as being too closely related to marry each other. AKA incest is the crime of having sexual intercourse with a parent, child, sibling, or grandchild. And Alabama's kind of known for that. And so if I had to give one piece of advice for Alabama, it'd be cut it down when it comes to incest. Cut it out. Stop with the incest. It's not good. It's a crime. It's a crime to have sexual intercourse with a parent, child, sibling, or grandchild. So stop doing that. Okay? That was my advice for Alabama. We are now moving on to Alaska, the second state alphabetically. So a lot of people may know this, but Alaska is very north. It's north. It's the most northern state in the United States. Fun fact, fun little piece of advice for you. Also, Alaska is extremely cold. So if I had to give one little snippet of advice for Alaska, it would be, it is extremely cold there. So remember to pack for cold weather. Bring your scarves, bring your mittens, bring your jackets. Bring all of that to travel to Alaska because it gets really cold. Trust me on that one. That's some advice. You're hearing that from Jonah, Mr. Advice Keen. I know a lot about advice, and I know a lot about Alaska. So remember to pack for cold weather. Okay, next up, alphabetically, Arizona. Unlike Alaska, which is very cold, Arizona is very hot. Very hot, and I would recommend packing for hot weather. So instead of bringing scarves, jackets, mittens, etc., I would bring some shorts, bring some tank tops, maybe some t-shirts as well, and maybe even some sunscreen, packing for hot weather. It can definitely be useful because you don't want to get super hot and sweaty and all that. Next up, alphabetically, would be Arkansas. Now, Arkansas, I don't really know. I just don't know a lot about Arkansas. But if I had to give some advice, I would say maybe do a visit the Ozarks. Get a guided Ozarks off-road adventure tour, which are, I'm seeing right here, the tickets are $82.32 for adults. So it might not be the best for your wallet, but I'm sure it could be a lot of fun. You could also visit maybe Hot Springs or Little Rock or even Eureka Springs. Those are some beautiful places in Arkansas. I know a lot about Arkansas. Anyways, we're going to move on from that to California. Hollywood, California, here we come. California is one of the most famous states in all of the states. A lot of people know this. And if I had to give some advice on California, I would always say, always have your headshot and acting real on hand in case you run into any producers. So if you're in California, you're walking down Hollywood Boulevard, maybe you're on Lancashire, or the other states that exist in California, the other streets that exist in California, you could possibly run into a producer. Maybe you run into Steven Spielberg at Starbucks or something. And if you don't have your headshot and your acting reel on hand, you might not get the jobs or the acting gigs you really want. So you need to make sure you always have your headshot and acting reel on hand, or keep it in your purse or your book bag or wherever you have it, just in case. Okay, that was my California advice. I think that deserves a round of applause. Just because of the advice was very quality. Probably some of the best advice I've ever given, which is actually a lot considering I'm Mr. Advice. That's kind of my name. Okay, coming up next, Colorado. Now, Colorado, here's some advice that comes from me personally. I've struggled with this for a long time. Ever since I was a kid, I've always struggled with Denver omelets and the Denver nuggets. So those are two food, omelets and nuggets are two different types of food. But Denver omelets and Denver nuggets are also two completely different things. Denver omelets are kind of it's a style of omelet with ham and peppers, and it's very good. But the Denver Nuggets is not food. Denver Nuggets is actually the basketball team in Colorado. Now, don't get these confused, because one time I tried to order Denver Nuggets, and they brought out the coach for the Denver Nuggets, and that was very confusing. The waitress who was serving me was very confused as well. So if I had to give one piece of advice for Colorado, I'd say Denver omelets are omelets, but the Denver Nuggets are not nuggets. They are the basketball team of Denver. So don't get confused, because I sure do a lot of the time. It gets really confusing. Okay, next up, Connecticut. Okay, let me see here. Connecticut is home to a lot of things to do in the summer. You could go to New London, Hartford, New Haven, and there's these beautiful locations with the beautiful leaves, and you could go hiking or go to a museum. But in the winter, there really isn't a lot to do. You can maybe visit the Mark Twain House and Museum or go to Yale, but it's still going to be extremely cold, and it's going to be miserable, and you're going to get really depressed. So I'd recommend not living in Connecticut during the winter, and I'd also recommend not visiting Connecticut in the winter. I'd recommend staying there in the summertime, in the fall, and then when it starts to snow, I'd get the heck out of there, and I would go to a different state. Sorry, just clearing my throat a little bit. The next state we're going to do is Delaware. Now, Delaware, from what I understand, I mean, they're not the most popular state on the block. They're not California. They're not Illinois. They're not Hawaii. It's kind of an unknown state, an underground state. But if you are homeless in Delaware, I know the exact place that you should go. You need to go to the Friendship House. And Friendship House is pretty much a um, a homeless shelter in Delaware, and it's everyone has a place to call home there. And their mission statement is uniting people facing homelessness with loving, supportive communities that they can call home. And pretty much, Friendship House works with people who are experiencing homelessness in Delaware. Um, and pretty much, they strive to ensure every person is ultimately connected to a loving, supportive community in order to break the cycle of homelessness, which is an amazing statement. I love everything Friendship House has to do in Delaware. So that's pretty much my advice for Delaware. If you're homeless in Delaware, visit Friendship House. I definitely recommend it. Okay, we have finished Delaware. We are now on to Florida. Florida is a famous state. Everyone knows it. They're known for their classic hijinks like the Florida Man. You see it on the news. You see it on the newspaper. Florida Man. They do crazy stuff, and they are pretty crazy. So I'd recommend being careful of them. But if I had to give some advice, I would say retire there. A lot of people retire there. A lot of old folks. My dad, he wants to retire there once he finishes everything up at Terry Keen Automotive, where he works and where he runs his business, which if you were here for the last episode, you would know all about because we actually talked to him on the phone. And in fact, we will be talking to someone later during today's half hour. We're going to be talking to Michael Hamilton, a professor and author of this new book called Kids in Their Crotches, a book for children going through those years. And it's pretty much a puberty book. We'll get much more into that later, but get very excited for that. Okay. So that's my advice. Retire there in Florida. Anyways, we're now on to Georgia. Georgia is another confusing one for me. Georgia has the city of Atlanta. It's kind of their famous city. A lot of people know about it. A lot of people live there. But also I get confused between that and the classic city of Atlantis, which is a city underwater. And I remember when I was young, my father and mother, they wanted to go to Atlanta. But I kept thinking it was Atlantis, so I ended up sneaking out as down to the city of Atlantis. And that is not true. Do not be confused, folks. Atlanta is the city. Atlantis is a city of water, but they are not the same thing. They're two separate entities. Do not get those confused, guys. That is my advice. Don't get confused when it comes to Atlanta versus Atlantis. They are two very different cities and places, so I'd recommend that. Okay. Our next state alphabetically would be Hawaii. And when it comes to Hawaii, there's a specific time zone, and I'm not talking about the Pacific or Central time zone. I'm talking about island time. And island time, if you've ever been to Hawaii, is kind of a mindset where you arrive late. I mean, island time, everyone's relaxed, everyone's high, everyone's surfing, surf's up, folks. And they pretty much arrive at whatever time they want in Hawaii. So island time, Hawaii, that's my advice. Remember island time. Remember, it's a mindset and not a specific time zone. Another thing I've been confused about, so that's pretty much my advice. Anyways, I also don't really know a lot about Hawaii, so sorry about that. Which also leads me to my next state, Idaho, if we're going alphabetically. I've never been to Idaho, so I have no advice for Idaho, so we're going to skip that one. Sorry, guys. I've never been to Idaho, and I don't ever plan on going, at least in the current landscape financially and with my wife. So I will not be going to Idaho anytime soon. So there's no advice for Idaho. Sorry for all the Idaho heads out there. I know you could be a little distraught since I don't have any advice for Idaho, but hopefully all the other advice could hopefully hold you over until I visit Idaho. Okay. The next state we're going to be giving advice for alphabetically would be Illinois, home of Chicago, the Windy City, one of the most famous states of all time. And also, Chicago is home to one of the hubs of one of the most, to one of the hubs of gang violence in the U.S. So if I had to give some advice on gang violence in Chicago, I would say remember to not flash gang signs when you're out and about. I think it could be dangerous and it could get you in a lot of trouble. I've not been beaten up or anything in Chicago here so far, but I've heard some terrible stories, some nightmares, and I would not recommend it to flash gang signs. So that is my advice for Illinois. Next state, Indiana, home of Indianapolis, Indiana. Go Pacers. Just letting you guys know, the Pacers are the best basketball team in the country, and maybe even the world, and maybe even Earth or the Milky Way. I've been doing my research, and it seems like that's the case, but who knows? Anyways, for Indiana advice, I would, even though we're not in the best terms, I'd recommend going to Terry Keen Automotive, my dad's car dealership and service place, for if you have any car problems in Indiana. So pretty much my advice is go to Terry Keen Automotive if you have any car problems. That's probably the best piece of advice I could give you for Indiana, even though I did live there for a short period of time. That's probably my best advice. All right, next state, Iowa. I owe ya some advice, Iowa. That's just something I came up with. Similar to my advice for Indiana, my cousin Victor Jameson is actually a firefighter over in Des Moines, Iowa. So if you're ever on fire, or you need some firefighting advice, I would recommend visiting Victor Jameson at the Des Moines Fire Station in Iowa. And that's pretty much my advice for Iowa. I owe you some advice, and it's Victor Jameson at the Des Moines Fire Station. Okay, I think we should do one or two more states, and then I think Michael Hamilton is ready for me, and then we'll talk to him about his puberty book. So let's do Kansas real quick, and we can also try to do Kentucky, and then we will talk to Michael Hamilton. Okay. When it comes to Kansas, I would say, well, I've driven through Kansas, and I would say Kansas is really flat and very boring to drive through. If you find yourself planning a road trip of some kind, and you're going to go through Kansas, I'd recommend bringing a book or some comics to read while you're driving, so you don't get completely bored. It could be a worthwhile thing to maybe pack a book and read while you're driving, so you don't have to look at the ugly and boring Kansas landscape. Sorry, all the Kansas heads out there. It's just an ugly state, and I really do not like Kansas. I'm sorry, folks. Next state is Kentucky. Kentucky is famously the bourbon state, but if you don't drink alcohol like me, I would recommend doing something. I know you guys may have heard of this place. I'd recommend eating some KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's very delicious, and it's what KFC stands for, Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's just a little piece of advice, a little tidbit of advice. Okay, we've made it through Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, and Kentucky for the first episode of the state-themed advice we're going to be doing. We'll either do one more episode of this or two more, depending on what I have planned and what guests arrive in the coming episodes. But I'm going to play some music real quick, and then we will be talking to Michael Hamilton. So let's talk to him. Give me 1 second, guys.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Jonah Keen Podcast. I am now here with Michael J. Hamilton, Professor Michael J. Hamilton, sorry. And we're here to...
All right. right.
We're here
Go
to
on.
talk about your new book, Kids and Their Crotches, a book for children going through those years. And it's a book about puberty, and we're here
Yes.
just to talk all about it. So, fire away.
Okay, well, thank you, Jonah, for the introduction. It's very sweet of you to say. So yeah, I'll just start out. The book took about, oh, I don't know. In all honesty, about 14 years to write because I based the book off my sons, Robert and William. They're both now 24 and 27 respectively. So I had to take notes diligently while I was their father. But at the same time, it was hard because I had to write down all these notes as a researcher. So you can imagine the struggle I had as both the father and the proctor of this experiment. So there was definitely a lot of imbalance between me as a researcher and me as a father. So I'll say it definitely put a strain on our relationship as father and son, or both of them really. But we look back on it now, and it's becoming something great because I really did raise them in a not to self boast here, but I really raised them up well. I think.
Well, that's fantastic, Michael. Um, I'm so very happy about your sons and your book. Um, could you tell me more about what the book's about? Because you mentioned that you wrote it for 14 years and you mentioned your sons, but you still haven't really
Yes.
talked about what the book's actually about. And I don't want to beat around the bush here because I know your book is an advice book. That's why you're on the show. Kids in Their Crotches, a book for children. You're giving advice on children going through those years being puberty.
Yes. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah, that's okay.
okay. All right. I'm sorry, Joan. I got so sidetracked talking about my boys. Anyone who knows me, they know how I get. Talking about my boys, I can go on for hours and hours on end. Okay, so the book, Jonah, if I could say, it's Jonah. Can I level with you, son?
Go ahead.
I understand the book is called Kids in their crotches, but in all honesty, Jonah, between you and I, the book is honestly about sons, boys, becoming men, grown men, if that makes any sense at all.
It makes
Because
sense.
as I said before, I I have two boys at home. Oh, not at home, excuse me. I have two boys. I raised them up myself, me and my wife, Janet. And I noticed my boys becoming confused, let's say, with the hormones that they are facing. And so I and my team decided we're going to write about how to deal with this because I'm going to tell you, Jonah, you were there. I was there. These hormones are going crazy all the time. These boys are experiencing these
I
new
was
experiences,
there.
and well, at one point you were, weren't you, son?
Oh, I mean that's true. Sorry.
Um, as I was saying, these boys are going through so much. They are experiencing a whole new wave of hormones and testosterone. I tell you, and there's one big challenge that parents face when dealing with boys growing up, and that is the amount of testosterone that these boys have in their mammary glands and all over. There's it is profound the amount of testosterone that these young men possess because I'll tell you, at my old age, my wife sure wishes I could have some of that now. Listen to me ramble on like an old man that I am. But yeah, I want to help parents understand how to deal properly with these young men who are becoming progressively aggressive, more angry, confrontational. And I myself struggled with that because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't. I tried my best, and my boys turned out all right in the end. But if I did that just a different way, it could have really screwed them up. So I want to help parents understand the right way to do this because there is a right way and a wrong way, Jonah. I do say that. That is 100%. Do it the wrong way. These boys, they're screwed up for life. I'm sorry to say it. There's a good way to do this and a bad way. And if you follow my way by reading my book, your boys will turn out A-OK.
Wow. Well, I actually only have one boy, and he's only 3 right now.
Oh,
But
beautiful.
I'll
What's his name?
definitely. His name? Oh,
Yeah,
Johnny. Johnny's his name.
Johnny. Oh, it's adorable.
Thanks. I'm currently haven't seen him in a few months because
Oh, I'm sorry to hear this.
my wife has the children on the other side of town, and there's a lawsuit and all that. However,
No, yeah, I understand, son. It's a child psychologist. I see tons of young boys who deal with single parent homes. But if Jonah, listen here, son. I know you're a good father. You're doing the best you can right now, and you're trying your hardest. And I think little Johnny will see that in you.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry to get sidetracked again, my son. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. Thank you so much, Michael. You're
Thank
being
you for having me on. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to market my book because me and my team we've worked so hard on this for almost 2 decades now, and I would hate for this to not go anywhere. So, Jonah, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you, my friend, and give my best to your son and to your little girl.
okay. Uh, Hope you have a good one, Michael. Love you,
Thank you.
love you tons. You're doing a
Love you
great.
too, my boy.
Oh, I love you too, Michael.
Oh,
All
I love
right.
you too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, here we're back. Are we back? We are back on. Mike was officially hung up the phone. We thank you, Michael, for calling in. We appreciate you a ton. We thank you and we worship you. Okay, I think that's going to about do it for this episode of the Jonah Keen Show. It's been an absolute blast. We got to talk to Michael Hamilton. That was really sweet of him. He's a very nice man, and he's being very respectful and honest and courageous, and uh, he's very virtuous. So I praise him on high. We appreciate you, Michael. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It's been a wonderful episode. We got to do some state advice. Next episode, we'll be doing some more state-themed advice. We'll do Louisiana, Maine, Maryland for sure. We might get all the way to even Nevada. So that could be a treat and a half. I hope everyone enjoyed. We'll also hopefully be talking to a musician. So get your paws warmed up for that. It could be really exciting. But other than that, thank you so much for listening and take care, everyone. Bye-bye now.